Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a Paris you've never quite seen before. The kind that vanishes when the sun goes down. The cobblestones glisten faintly from the day's rain, and the smell of river mud mixes with horse manure and roasted chestnuts from a cart that never quite goes home. The sky above is an ink spill. The only thing separating you from total darkness is a trembling flame trapped inside a glass globe hanging halfway between two crooked buildings. You tilt your head up and realize it's whale oil keeping that little light alive. Whale oil. From a creature that once swam free under Arctic stars, now sizzling in a lamp to help Parisians not trip on their way home. You probably wouldn't survive the smell, though it's been compared to a mixture of wet dog and old butter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk slowly through the twisting lanes of early 19th century Paris. Nighttime here isn't gentle. It's thick and uneven, a soup of darkness that swallows even the grandest facades. Candles are for the rich and torches are for mobs. For everyone else, there's the uncertain flicker of oil lamps hung like nervous stars along the main streets. Before this, the city's nights had belonged entirely to thieves, rats, and the occasional poet too drunk to care which was which. Historians still argue whether Paris's obsession with street lighting was driven by safety or spectacle. One camp insists it was to stop crime. Another says it was simply about civic pride, a capital that claimed to be the city of light long before electricity. What's certain is that by the early 1800s, the city council had decided every main street must be lit no matter how, and so began the age of whale oil. You pass by a lamplighter, his ladder wobbling as he climbs to refill a glass globe. He carries a small tin of oil that glints in the dim glow. The lamp itself is a simple affair. A metal frame, a wick, a reservoir filled with what was once the fat of a sperm whale, boiled and strained and shipped halfway across the world. The air around him smells faintly like an overcooked fish market. Yet, despite the odor, the people watching seem awed. To them, this is civilization. Fire, harnessed and suspended above the street, proof that humans could defy the night. Paris before lighting was almost unrecognizable. Imagine a maze of alleys where moonlight barely touched the ground, where people carried small personal lanterns and police patrols worked by memory. Even the Seine itself was dangerous, a black mirror that reflected nothing. Letters from the time described the night as a slow-moving fog of fear. You could hear footsteps but never see their owner. Dogs barked at ghosts. Drunks sang to walls. Then came the oil. It didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, lamp by lamp, neighborhood by neighborhood. The first large-scale public lighting began under Louis XIV, long before electricity was a dream. Back then, lanterns used vegetable oils or tallow, but by the early 19th century, technology and trade had turned toward something stronger. Whale blubber, specifically the clear, clean-burning oil from the head cavity of the sperm whale. It sounds absurd now, but in those days, whale oil was the height of progress, what lithium batteries are to us today. Ships sailed out from France, Britain, and New England in search of whales, and when they returned, their barrels of oil were worth more than gold. The richest merchant houses in Paris weren't always dealing in silk or wine. Sometimes they dealt in fat. You walk past one of the oil merchants near the Rue de Rivoli. His warehouse reeks. The barrels are stacked high, marked with exotic port names: Nantucket, New Bedford, Le Havre. Inside, workers in greasy aprons pour, strain, and bottle the oil that will soon feed hundreds of lamps across the city. A clerk nearby is scribbling figures in a ledger, each drop accounted for as if it were perfume. You can't help but smile. This is how civilization often smells, ambitious and slightly rotten. There's a certain poetry in it, though. A whale swims thousands of miles through icy waters, only to end up illuminating the love letters of Parisian poets. Somewhere, under a flickering lamp, a young man reads his verses to a girl pretending to be impressed. The flame dances. The air quivers. Somewhere deep inside that glass, an Arctic ghost flickers. Not everyone approves, of course. The church frowns at the extravagance. Rural visitors complain that the light spoils the stars. And animal advocates, yes, even then, raise quiet concerns about slaughtering majestic creatures for fashion and fuel. But most Parisians are too enchanted. They call the new lamplight lumière civile, the civil light. It becomes a symbol of order, enlightenment, and even morality. The city's leaders boast that Paris is now safe for evening walks, and soon cafes begin to stay open later. Musicians play longer. Conversations stretch into midnight. One quirky tidbit. Early whale oil lamps often attracted moths and midges so thick that lamplighters had to wipe off the glass every evening. Some joked that Paris wasn't the city of light. It was the city of bugs. The humor didn't stop the progress. By 1820, there were more than 15,000 lamps across the city, all fed by whale oil, each one a tiny promise that the dark could be tamed. But there's still something haunting about those nights. You notice it as you pass through a square where the lamps flicker unevenly. The light is never steady. It breathes, expands, and contracts like something alive. It reminds you that every drop of brightness here has a cost measured not just in francs, but in lives, oceans, and miles of open sea. And yet in that trembling glow, you feel the heartbeat of a city learning to dream after dark. The streets hum softly, the lamps buzz faintly, and you, lucky traveler, get to witness the moment when humanity first decided that night should no longer mean fear. Still, as the lamps sway in the wind, you can't shake the thought that somewhere far away, another whale is diving deep into cold silence, unaware that its fate is to shine over the cobblestones of Paris. The age of illumination is just beginning, but like every bright idea, it's going to get messy before it truly glows. You wake to the sound of hammers on barrels. The docks along the Seine are alive with motion. Workers shouting, pulleys creaking, the sour sweet tang of oil thick in the morning air. You follow the noise toward a cluster of warehouses where the city's veins of light are being prepared, one dripping cask at a time. This is where the story truly begins. The brutal, stinking, lucrative business of turning whales into night. The barrels come from far away. Places with names that sound like cold wind: Nantucket, New Bedford, St. Malo, Bergen. Each one carries within it months of human misery and months more of whale suffering. You can almost hear the creak of ships lost to fog, the splash of harpoons, the cries of sailors cursing both sea and sky. The smell on shore is unmistakable, a blend of brine, smoke, and something like burned cheese. Welcome to 19th century energy infrastructure. You probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes aboard a whaling ship. The men who did were part lumberjack, part butcher, part gambler. Whales weren't just hunted, they were battled. Sailors rowed small open boats toward a living mountain, thrusting iron into its flesh and hanging on as it dragged them miles through freezing water. Historians still argue whether these men were heroes of progress or desperate laborers trapped in an economic machine too big to escape. Whaling was dangerous, yes, but profitable beyond measure. The oil from a single sperm whale could fill 40 lamps for years. Paris needed thousands of whales a decade to stay bright. You imagine that for every boulevard twinkling in the distance, some vast creature once glided through darkness, now transformed into light. Civilization, it seems, has always had a taste for irony. You wander down to the wharf side, where a ship just arrived from Le Havre. The crew is unloading barrels wrapped in straw, marked with black tar symbols: sperm, blubber, train oil. The merchants' faces gleam with anticipation. Whale oil burns bright and steady, unlike tallow or olive oil, which sputter or smell faintly like old soup. It's easy to see why Paris fell in love with it. A foreman pries open a barrel. The scent that escapes makes your eyes water. One worker jokes, "You can always tell a rich man. He smells like he can afford light." Another replies, "Or like he's been swimming in it." The laughter is brief. There's too much work. They roll the barrels onto carts headed for the city's lamp depots. The oil will be filtered, mixed with alcohol to reduce congealing, then delivered to lamplighters who will climb their ladders at dusk like clockwork angels armed with buckets. But before any of that, there's the matter of labor, the wretched kind that history forgets. The whale oil doesn't arrive ready to burn. It must be purified in boiling vats that line the industrial edges of Paris. You follow the smell and find a riverside factory belching gray smoke. Inside, men stir cauldrons with long iron paddles, their aprons slick with grease. The heat is unbearable. The fumes sting your throat. This is where the magic happens, or the misery, depending on your view. It takes a special kind of stubbornness to work here. One man you meet, a worker named Etienne, has been refining oil for 20 years. He laughs when you ask if he's used to the smell. You never get used to it, he says. You just forget that the rest of the world smells better. He earns barely enough to afford bread and wine, but his hands help keep Paris alight. His pride is quiet but real. When the lamps glow, he tells you, people don't think of us. But they should. The wealth from this industry pools higher up the chain. Merchant families grow rich enough to buy townhouses and silk waistcoats. The French bourgeoisie loves its evenings, loves its visible luxury. Light is class-made visible. To stroll under whale oil lamps means you belong to the part of the world that can command fire at will. A quirky fact: during the boom years, enterprising dealers tried to counterfeit whale oil by mixing in animal fats and even mineral oil. The scam worked until Parisian lamps started sputtering black smoke that stained every ceiling it touched. Fake light, newspapers mocked, for fake gentlemen. The city eventually set up inspectors to test lamp oils, a sort of early energy regulation system. Still, as lucrative as it was, the business stank, literally and morally. There were protests from animal lovers and moralists alike. One pamphlet you glimpse pinned to a tavern door reads, "How many beasts must perish for one city's vanity?" A counter-poster responds the next morning, "Better whales than Parisians." The argument never really ended. It simply evolved into modern versions about coal, oil, and whatever comes next. Historians still argue whether whale oil truly transformed Parisian life or merely gilded it. Did it make the streets safer? Probably. Did it make the city kinder? Unclear. Light can reveal beauty, but it also exposes ugliness. Under the glow of whale oil, poverty looked sharper, the grime more visible, and the shadows behind the mansions even deeper. Paris could now see itself clearly, and not everyone liked the view. As dusk approaches, you follow a lamplighter through the alleys. He's an older man, wiry, with a brass pole and a calm routine. One by one, he opens the lamps, trims the wicks, and pours in the new oil. Each lamp takes about half a pint. He hums a tune while he works. When the flame catches, he watches it steady itself before moving on. "It's the closest thing I'll ever do to painting," he says softly. By the time he's finished his route, the city shimmers. The Seine mirrors the glow like a string of molten pearls. Carriages roll by, couples laugh, and street vendors shout about roasted nuts. You stand on a bridge and think about how all this beauty, this calm golden evening, depends on creatures hunted halfway across the world and men sweating in infernal workshops. And then, for a fleeting moment, you understand the peculiar poetry of the 19th century, an age so desperate to conquer nature that it turned the ocean itself into light. The smell clings to your coat. The night hums, and somewhere, in the quiet rhythm of the lamps, Paris begins to dream again. By the time you wander into the heart of the city, Paris has become a living experiment in how far humanity will go to push back the dark. You notice that the lamps now come in different shapes, some round and globed like fat jellyfish, others narrow and upright, their metal polished to a dull sheen. The streets themselves seem prouder, wider, as if the city is learning how to stand tall under its own glow. At the corner of Rue Saint-Honoré, a group of engineers in waistcoats is gathered around a table covered in sketches, wicks, and bits of reflective metal. They belong to what's officially called Le Comité d'éclairage de la Ville de Paris, the Committee of Illumination. You have to admit, that's a pretty cool name for a group of men who spend their days debating soot density and the ideal viscosity of whale oil. Their job is both scientific and symbolic, to make Paris shine brighter, longer, and cheaper. They argue in the same way modern tech companies debate pixels or battery life. One insists that a wider chimney allows cleaner combustion. Another waves a handkerchief, demonstrating how airflow affects flicker. "We are not lighting streets," one man declares, pounding the table. "We are lighting civilization." He's dead serious, though his wig is slightly crooked, making the whole scene unintentionally comedic. You can't help but think, this is the 19th century version of a startup meeting, minus the coffee machine. Historians still argue whether the committee's obsession was driven by genuine civic concern or just bureaucratic vanity. But the results are undeniable. Paris begins to standardize its lamps. Every district gets uniform posts, glass housings, and specific oil mixtures designed for maximum brightness with minimum smoke. It's the kind of city planning that would make Haussmann proud a few decades later. You follow one of the inspectors through a narrow passage where new lamps are being tested. The air vibrates faintly with heat. The wicks hiss when first lit, releasing that unmistakable whale oil scent, a perfume of progress, if progress could smell like damp fish wrapped in linen. The inspector mutters about lumens long before the word officially exists. He notes how the light bounces off wet cobblestones, how far it reaches down an alley before dying. Paris, at that moment, is inventing the modern night. But invention isn't cheap. The city budget groans under the cost of maintaining thousands of lamps and paying an army of lamplighters. The government posts advertisements seeking bids from suppliers. One line reads, "Only oil of the finest transparency, free from sediment and odor, shall be accepted," which is hilarious, considering none of it is odor-free. Every evening the city smells faintly like the inside of a whale. Still, Parisians adapt. They even start romanticizing the scent. Poets describe it as the perfume of progress. Perfume makers, ever opportunistic, briefly experiment with eau de lampe, a scented oil meant to imitate the soft glow of whale light on skin. Spoiler, it sells terribly. You pause to watch a demonstration in one of the courtyards. The committee has invited the public to compare oils: whale, colza, olive, and tallow. The crowd gathers, murmuring as each flame is lit. Whale oil burns brightest, steady and golden, while the others either sputter or smoke. A child claps in delight. A journalist nearby scribbles, "The whale triumphs again," for now at least. A quirky tidbit: To measure light quality, engineers used a contraption called a photometric box, a wooden case with a sliding screen and small mirrors inside. They would adjust the screen until the reflected glow of one lamp matched another, then note the distance. It sounds overly complicated, but it was cutting-edge science. Paris was effectively quantifying beauty. The committee's records are full of delightful absurdities. Debates over wick thicknesses, oil purity, and the correct curvature of lamp glass. At one point, they even considered importing American-style reflector plates shaped like seashells to better distribute light. Imagine the pride. Men in top hats discussing whale fat and shell-shaped mirrors as if they were philosophers of radiance. Historians still argue whether these innovations were genuinely revolutionary or just elegant tinkering. But they paved the way for a more visible city, a place where people began to live at night as comfortably as by day. Theaters flourished, cafes multiplied, and the bourgeoisie invented a new pastime, flânerie, the art of strolling just to see and be seen. You join the evening promenade. The lamps line the boulevards like glowing pearls on black velvet. Every step feels deliberate, designed. The women's dresses shimmer faintly in the golden light. The men's boots shine with careful polish. You catch snippets of conversation, gossip, poetry, flirtation, the gentle buzz of a city awakening to itself. Of course, not everyone loves the new order. A grumpy old man near a cafe mutters, "All this light and still no one can see truth." You smile. Paris has always produced philosophers at random. Another complains that the light spoils the mystery. There's something to that. The deep shadows that once hid secrets are now shallow, exposed. Romance changes when everything is visible, but for most, the lamps mean safety. Crime rates drop along lit streets. The police rejoice. Women begin venturing out after dusk without escorts, though still cautiously. Merchants note increased business. Even beggars relocate to brighter corners where generosity seems to shine more easily. The city's pulse quickens. Night, once a realm of fear, becomes an extension of day. You notice the lamplighters again. They're everywhere now, moving with a grace that comes from repetition. One climbs, refills, trims, and moves on without ever breaking rhythm. The people nod as he passes, some even tipping their hats. For a moment you realize he's more than a worker. He's a symbol, the one who literally brings light. It's almost funny to think that the entire infrastructure depends on whale blubber. You imagine explaining it to someone from the future. Yes, the most sophisticated city in the world glows at night because sailors boiled sea monsters in barrels. But that's humanity for you. Ingenious, slightly horrifying, and always convinced it's doing something noble. A gentle drizzle begins, turning the gasps of lamps into soft halos. You watch droplets sizzle as they hit the hot glass, each one disappearing into steam. Somewhere, a violin plays from an open window. For a moment, the entire city feels like a single living lantern, fragile yet radiant. And as you stroll down the boulevard, shoes tapping against stone, it occurs to you, this is the true heart of Paris. Not the grand palaces or cathedrals, but the quiet persistence of people who refuse to surrender to darkness. You walk further into the city as evening thickens, and Paris begins to smell like it always does now, like light and rot, beauty and decay in equal measure. The faint, greasy perfume of whale oil is everywhere, in your hair, on your coat, even clinging to the cobblestones. You can almost taste it, that strange blend of salt, smoke, and something ancient, like the ghost of an ocean whispering through the streets. Tonight, though, the lamps glow brighter than usual. The Committee of Illumination has just installed a new batch of improved reflectors, and everyone is talking about them. You pause under one of the fresh lamps, noticing how the light spreads wider, softer, almost painterly. The flame hums quietly, as if pleased with itself. For a moment you could almost call it beautiful, if it didn't make your nose wrinkle. A couple passes by, arm in arm, murmuring about the scent of progress. You can't help but smirk. That's one way to put it. Whale oil, when burned, has an odor that can best be described as hot aquarium with a side of despair. And yet, Parisians pretend to adore it. Perfume makers even release satirical fragrances inspired by the new aroma, Lumière Sauvage Eau d'Océan Industrielle. They don't sell well, but they do make good jokes at salons. Historians still argue whether Parisians truly tolerated the stench or simply grew numb to it. Some diaries from the 1830s describe the smell as a constant reminder of human ingenuity, while others call it the invisible fog of ambition. Either way, it's the smell of enlightenment. Literally, you make your way toward the Palais Royal, the very center of public life, where the lamps burn brightest and the ideas burn faster. Writers, revolutionaries, courtesans, and clerks all share the same air, their shadows tangled in the glow. The light feels theatrical, as if Paris itself is performing for you. A philosopher seated at a cafe table lifts his cup of coffee and says to his friend, "We are living in an illuminated age. Light is truth." His friend snorts. "Truth smells worse than usual tonight." They laugh, and you realize that in Paris, even the smell of whale oil can become a metaphor. It's easy to romanticize all this now. The golden hue, the laughter, the reflection of lamps on wet stone, but imagine it as it was. The streets were crowded, uneven, slick with waste. The lamps hissed and popped when rain hit them. Sometimes the glass cracked, spilling fire onto the street. Lamplighters carried buckets of sand just in case, and yet people still strolled, proud of their illuminated city. There's a lovely absurdity in how humans learn to endure discomfort when it feels like progress. You think of those philosophers in powdered wigs debating metaphysics under lamps that smell like fried fish. They didn't care. The symbolism mattered more. Light was the visible proof of intellect, a declaration that Paris belonged to the Enlightenment, to reason, to civilization itself. You lean against a lamppost and watch the carriages go by. Their wheels splash through puddles of reflected gold. A beggar nearby holds up a tin cup, its rim shining faintly in the glow. Two lovers sneak into an alley, their silhouettes framed by light that has traveled from the Arctic through the veins of a whale. A quirky tidbit: some Parisians claimed that the odor of whale oil had health benefits. One doctor wrote that inhaling moderate quantities of the vapor could fortify the lungs. Another claimed it deterred mosquitoes. Whether it worked or not, you can't help but imagine 19th-century hypochondriacs standing under street lamps at night, inhaling deeply and insisting they feel rejuvenated. Still, not everyone found the experience charming. Letters to newspapers complained about headaches, irritated throats, and greasy residues collecting on window panes. One writer lamented, "We have traded darkness for disease." A rival paper responded, "At least now we can see what's killing us." Historians still argue whether this was exaggeration or genuine health concern. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Paris had indeed become a little brighter and a little smellier, but few wanted to return to pitch-black nights. You continue walking toward the Seine, where the reflections double the city's glow. The river shimmers with trembling bands of gold, like molten honey swirling over black silk. The water carries a faint rainbow sheen of oil runoff, a grim little signature of the century's progress. It's here, on the Pont Neuf, that you overhear a street preacher shouting under the light. "God made the sun," he declares, waving a Bible. "But man, proud man, wants his own. People laugh, toss him coins, and move on. A woman whispers to her companion, "He's right, but I do love how it looks." You glance up at the lamp nearest you. Inside the glass, the flame dances as if amused. It's easy to forget how miraculous it must have felt to see your city transformed from shadow to spectacle. The whale oil flame burns steady, serene, unaware that it's slowly consuming an entire species in the name of aesthetics. Yet you can't deny the emotional pull. There's something deeply human about this obsession with light. Our endless need to prove we can conquer night, to show that even the deep ocean can be turned into elegance. You can almost imagine the whales as reluctant participants in the Enlightenment, sacrificed for poetry and visibility. A young boy runs past, chasing his own shadow under the lamps. His laughter rings out, pure and simple. Around him the adults keep walking, some proud, some indifferent, but the boy sees the light for what it truly is: magic. As you turn back toward the heart of the city, the lamps hum softly, the air thick with salt and smoke. The philosophers are still talking. The lovers are still kissing. The lamplighter, somewhere down the street, is trimming another wick. And you realize this is how progress always feels: brilliant, inconvenient, and slightly nauseating. Paris glows on, unbothered. The scent of enlightenment fills your lungs, and the night, for the first time in history, feels a little less infinite. You wander out again after dusk, when the whale oil lamps have just been lit, their yellow light trembling in the wind like nervous candle flames. The smell is still there, faintly oily, slightly fishy, but the Parisians have learned to live with it. They wrinkle their noses, they gossip about the stench, and then they go on walking, because this light, however imperfect, has become part of the city's pulse. The lamplighters move along the boulevards in their slow, deliberate rhythm, poles in hand, lighting one glass globe after another. Each man wears a small brass badge from the city's Department of Public Lighting, a modest emblem of civic pride. Children point at them, whispering as though they were minor saints of the night. A good lamplighter knows how to coax the flame to life without wasting oil, how to trim the wick just enough to keep it bright but not smoky. In some neighborhoods, people leave a little bread or wine for them, an offering of gratitude for keeping darkness at bay. But you soon notice how light changes behavior. A few years ago, the streets would have been nearly deserted by this hour, except for beggars, stray dogs, and the occasional carriage. Now small crowds linger. Lovers stroll arm in arm, emboldened by visibility. Street vendors push their carts a little longer into the night, hawking roasted chestnuts or cheap wine. And not far from them, cut purses and confidence men adapt to the new environment. For where there is light, there are shadows just sharp enough to hide in. Police reports from the 1830s tell curious tales. Pickpockets complain that the lamps expose them too much. Others, more cunning, use the light itself as distraction, flashing a smile under the glow while their fingers slip unseen. The very illumination meant to make the streets safe becomes a tool of misdirection. And then, politics. Always politics. The cafes spill over with argument and smoke, the news sheets fluttering under the lamps, their bold headlines reflecting in puddles of whale oil and rainwater. You overhear snippets, talk of reform, of the king's ministers, of the price of bread and the scandal of corruption. Revolution no longer whispers only in hidden cellars. It murmurs here under public light. During the July Revolution of 1830, the same lamps that once symbolized order were smashed in rage. Lamplighters, torn between duty and sympathy, often fled or joined the crowd. In memoirs, one lamplighter wrote, "That night I saw my own work turned into weapons, poles ripped from the lamps to strike soldiers. Light itself, I thought, had changed sides." Yet even after the barricades fell and peace returned, The lamplighter's silhouette regained its quiet dignity. There's something profoundly human in their ritual, walking from post to post, turning darkness into a rhythm of tiny suns. They are anonymous heroes, servants of an idea larger than themselves, that civilization can be measured by how gently it holds back the night. As you follow one lamplighter toward the Place de la Concorde, he pauses and says softly to no one in particular, "People think I light lamps, but really, I light hope." His words float into the cool evening air, mingling with the smell of oil and the faint hum of distant carriages. The lamps burn on, halos trembling over the cobblestones. Beneath them, Paris keeps reinventing itself in whispered seductions, secret deals, and seditious dreams. Rumors travel faster than the flame now. By the time the lamplighter reaches the end of his route, a new scandal or poem has already spread across the arrondissement, and you realize, standing in that uncertain glow, that light is never neutral. It can comfort or expose, inspire or betray. It illuminates not just the streets, but the very contradictions of the people who walk them, all of them drawn, moth-like, to the fragile promise of brightness in the dark. The glow that once seemed endless begins to falter. You can sense it in the flicker of the lamps and in the anxious chatter of merchants. Paris has grown addicted to brightness, yet the seas whisper rumors of exhaustion. Whales, once hunted with reckless confidence, are vanishing. Ships return half-laden, their barrels of oil fewer, their crews hollow-eyed. The Arctic and the South Seas have been plundered for decades, and now even the bravest captains admit the ocean feels emptier. In the markets, prices lurch upward like fever charts. Every gallon of whale oil costs more than the last. Taverns mutter about rationing, and city accountants run quills dry balancing impossible budgets. The poorer neighborhoods watch their lamps go dim first. Where there was once a golden shimmer on wet cobblestones, there are now pools of darkness. The city that bragged of light begins to look, once again, like a medieval labyrinth after dusk. Desperation breeds invention, or at least deceit. Some merchants thin their oil with cheaper mixtures, fish oil, linseed, even animal fat. The lamps burn smoky and foul, coughing soot onto walls and faces. Housewives complain that the fumes blacken curtains. Lamplighters cough through their shifts, yet the officials cling to the illusion of progress, because to dim the city would feel like reversing time itself. In the taverns of the Ile Saint-Louis, you overhear speculation as sharp as the smell. Talk of new fuels, new machines, new sources of light. An eccentric chemist claims he can distill illumination from coal gas. Another insists that electric sparks could someday replace flame altogether. The skeptics laugh, reminding everyone that lightning cannot be tamed, and coal gas explodes. But in this uncertainty, you can sense the first tremor of transition. By the mid-1820s, the whale oil crisis is undeniable. Shipyards fall silent. Chandlers shutter their shops. The Parisian lamp, once a symbol of human triumph over nature, becomes an emblem of fragility. The same oil that powered enlightenment now exposes its cost. Oceans stripped bare, species bleeding toward extinction, and an economy trembling on the edge of shadow. You stand on the Pont Neuf one murky evening, watching lamplighters make their rounds. Their torches hiss as they tilt flame into each glass globe one by one. Behind them the Seine glimmers faintly, reflecting a city uncertain of its own brilliance. Somewhere out there, whales slip deeper into cold black waters beyond the reach of harpoons, and Paris, for all its cleverness, begins to grope for another way to see in the dark. You first hear of gaslight as rumor, a flicker of gossip whispered between lamplighters and clerks. Some say it burns without oil, others swear it smells worse than death, yet curiosity glows brighter than fear, and by the 1820s, Paris cannot resist an experiment. Engineers from England arrive, boasting of underground pipes and fiery jets that will make night itself obsolete. No more whales, they promise, only progress. The first demonstrations are half magic, half menace. A street in the Marais is lit entirely by gas. Its lamps burn steady and white, impervious to wind or rain. Crowds gather, necks craned, faces glowing ghostly pale. The old lamplighters stare in uneasy silence. Their long poles and oil canisters seem suddenly ancient, like relics of a simpler age. Children clap, dogs bark, and a few cynics mutter that the light is too clean, too unnatural. In cafes, debates erupt as violently as revolutions. Philosophers declare that gaslight is the second enlightenment, the visible triumph of modernity. But others warn that such brilliance comes with unseen chains. The city must dig deep, literally, to feed these lamps, laying miles of pipes beneath its cobblestones. A single leak could turn a cellar into a bomb. The progress that once floated in whale oil now hisses through metal veins, unseen and uncontrollable. Still, Paris is enchanted. Investors rush in. Whole companies are born overnight, printing pamphlets that promise the eternal day. Engineers sketch plans for gas works along the Seine. Newspapers boast that even the poorest alleys will soon shine like palaces. The old oil merchants fume, calling it heresy, while others quietly sell their remaining barrels and retire before the future swallows them. You wander through this changing night, one foot in the past, one in the new age. On the Boulevard du Temple, actors rehearse under gas lamps that never waver. Painters grumble that the light ruins their chiaroscuro. Poets swoon that it reveals every secret too clearly. The air hums faintly now, alive with the hiss of gas valves and the tremor of transformation. Yet not everyone can afford the miracle. In the poorer districts, lamps still burn oil, cheap, dirty substitutes that spit and fade by midnight. The city becomes a patchwork of centuries, whale oil in the alleys, gaslight on the grand boulevards, and darkness between. You realize that progress, like light itself, casts shadows in proportion to its brilliance. By the 1840s, gaslight wins. The last whale oil contracts dissolve into memory. Whaling ports decay, blubber vats grow cold. Out at sea, the remaining whales swim in silence, spared only because humans have found a more efficient glow. Paris, meanwhile, becomes the city of light at last, its streets blazing every night, its citizens dreaming under a manufactured dawn. But as you walk home under this artificial sunrise, you cannot shake the scent of history. The wind carries a faint trace of something. Oil, salt, the ghost of a vanished ocean. You look up at the lamps and think, every age believes it has tamed the dark, until the next one arrives with a brighter flame. You stand now in modern Paris, long after the whales have vanished and the gasworks have gone silent. The streets blaze with a brilliance so constant that darkness feels like an old superstition. Neon letters hum, car headlights sweep past, and even the Seine gleams like polished steel. But beneath this glittering calm lies a faint heartbeat from centuries ago, a rhythm of oil lamps, gas flames, and hands that once fought to keep the night alive. You wander through the city's arteries, the same boulevards that once reeked of whale oil. Beneath your shoes, old tunnels still breathe. Some were gas conduits, others sewage, others forgotten arteries of light. The stones remember. Each one, slick with centuries of rain, has felt the weight of lamplighters' boots and the cautious shuffle of Parisians testing the reach of new illumination. The ghosts of their gestures linger, a flick of the wrist, a hiss of flame, the brief surrender of darkness. Historians still argue whether the City of Light earned its name from philosophy or from the literal glow of its streets. Maybe both. Maybe Paris lit itself twice, once in the mind, once in the world, and never looked back. Yet if you listen carefully, in the hum of traffic and the buzz of electricity, you can almost hear the whisper of whale fat simmering in old iron lamps, the crackle of gas ignition, the soft sigh of a lamplighter exhaling after his final round. There's irony in it, of course. The oil that once came from the ocean now runs through cables drawn from distant power plants. Humanity hasn't changed much. We still chase the next brighter thing, the next cleaner flame, the next version of forever light. But every innovation carries its scent, its waste, its ghost. Progress, you realize, is less a ladder than a long spiral staircase, turning endlessly upward while the echoes of earlier steps never quite fade. As you cross Pont Neuf, the lamps shimmer on the water, rippling like the movement of something alive beneath. You think of the whales again, their vast bodies gliding silently through black depths, their oil once poured into glass globes above Parisian heads. They gave the city its first true night light and then vanished into legend. Yet in some small, strange way they still glow each evening, disguised in the radiance that replaced them. You pause and look up at a street lamp, sleek, modern, efficient. It doesn't flicker, doesn't smoke, doesn't smell. But maybe that's what's missing, the romance of imperfection, the human struggle against the dark, the lamplighter's slow climb, the flare of a match, the sigh of the city preparing for sleep. We've erased the ritual, but the yearning remains. And somewhere deep in your mind, as the night breeze drifts off the river, you feel the faintest twinge of nostalgia for that other Paris, the one where the stars still competed with street lamps, where light was earned, not assumed. You picture yourself holding an oil lamp, shielding it against the wind, watching its golden flame shiver in the damp air. And for a heartbeat, you understand, light has always been more than visibility. It's defiance. It's hope. It's our way of saying quietly that the night doesn't get the final word. And now, as you settle deeper into your pillow, let the glow of old Paris fade to a gentle blur. Picture the Seine again, not roaring with traffic, but calm and silvery beneath a sky that's finally gone dark. The gaslights flicker out one by one, replaced by a soft moonlight that needs no maintenance, no fuel, no human hand. You can almost smell the cool air, washed clean of oil and soot. Imagine the lamplighter, that quiet figure of centuries past, climbing his last ladder. He reaches the top, pauses, and gazes over the city he helped shape, each small flame a promise against oblivion. Then with one slow motion, he snuffs the final lamp and descends into the shadows he spent his life chasing away. You realize that progress doesn't erase the past. It only layers it, like the light upon the stone, the glow upon the water, the memory upon the dream. Somewhere beneath your ceiling bulb or your phone screen lies the same desire that drove sailors into frozen seas and engineers into smoky workshops. The longing to make the darkness gentle. So let the story dim, slowly, softly. The lights of Paris recede into the distance, and the hum of the modern world becomes a lullaby. Rest easy beneath this inherited glow, knowing that even in the deepest night, humanity has always found a way to keep a little flame alive. Sweet dreams.